The road stretched endlessly ahead, swallowed by the darkness of the midnight fog. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my knuckles turning pale under the dim glow of the dashboard. There was no moon tonight, just a suffocating blackness that pressed in from all sides. The headlights, barely cutting through the thick mist, rolling in waves across the cracked asphalt. I hadn't seen another car for miles. Just me, the empty road, and the distant hum of my engine against the stillness of the night. I was returning from my cousin's house, a late-night visit that had stretched longer than I intended. We had talked about everything and nothing, old memories, childhood fears, the way some places never quite lose their eeriness, no matter how many years pass. Maybe that's why I had this lingering unease in my chest. Or maybe it was just the road. This particular stretch had a reputation, though I never gave much thought to ghost stories. Truckers whispered about strange figures appearing in their rearview mirrors, only to vanish when they turned to look. Others spoke of headlights following them for miles, but when they pulled over, there was no car behind them. I told myself it was nonsense. Just tricks of the night, exhaustion playing games with the mind. Yet, as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't entirely alone. It was subtle at first, a prickle at the back of my neck, the quiet sensation of being watched. I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something lurking in the back seat. But there was only darkness. I let out a breath, laughing at myself. The mind does strange things when you're tired. The radio crackled. Static, sharp, and sudden, broke through the silence. I frowned, reaching for the dial. The signal had been clear just a moment ago. A whisper cut through the noise, faint, distorted. I turned the volume up, trying to make out the words, but the static swallowed them whole. My fingers twitched over the buttons, flipping through stations, but every single one was the same. Just hissing, empty white noise. A shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. A figure standing by the side of the road. I slammed the brakes, my heart hammering. The tires screeched against the pavement as the car shuddered to a halt. My breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. The figure was gone. I stared out into the fog, my pulse pounding in my ears. Had I imagined it? No. I was sure I had seen someone. A person, or something like a person. But there was nothing now. Just the empty road stretching into the distance, and the trees beyond, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky. I exhaled, forcing a laugh. Just fatigue. Just my mind playing tricks. I put the car back in gear and started driving again, faster this time. I just wanted to get home. A chill seeped into the car, colder than it should have been. The heater was on, but my breath fogged the windshield. My fingers felt numb against the wheel. Then, from the back seat, I heard it. A slow, deliberate exhale. Not mine. The sound was so soft at first that I almost convinced myself it was nothing. Just my own breath, echoing strangely in the confined space of the car. But then I heard it again. A slow, deliberate exhale. Too close, too real. My hands clenched the wheel, my knuckles stiff and cold. I didn't turn around. Every nerve in my body screamed not to look. The rearview mirror was right there, just inches from my line of sight, but I kept my eyes fixed on the road. I could feel it now, something behind me, just out of sight. The air was thick, heavy, pressing against my skin like an unseen weight. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. Maybe it was just in my head. Maybe I was imagining things. That had to be it. It had to be. Then the temperature dropped again. A sharp, unnatural cold. The heater was still on. I could hear the low hum of it, feel the warm air against my hands. But the rest of the car felt like a freezer. My breath came out in a pale mist, swirling in the dim light of the dashboard. The radio crackled, cutting through the silence like the snap of broken glass. A voice, low, distorted, whispered something I couldn't understand. I reached for the dial again, my fingers trembling, but as soon as I touched it, the radio cut off completely. Silence, then a shift, the faintest sound of fabric rustling. My throat tightened. There was something in the back seat. I could see the edges of the mirror now, the reflection just within my peripheral vision. If I turned my head even slightly, I would see it. My pulse pounded in my ears, every instinct screaming at me to keep my eyes forward. The road stretched endlessly ahead, swallowed by the darkness, but I barely saw it anymore. All I could hear was my own breathing, the sound of my heart thudding against my ribs. And then, the whisper, closer this time, right behind my ear. A single word, spoken in a voice that was barely human. Stop! A shudder tore through me. I slammed my foot on the accelerator without thinking, the engine roaring as the car lurched forward. The tires skidded against the asphalt, but I didn't care. I had to get away from whatever was in the back seat. The rearview mirror tilted slightly, just enough for me to catch a glimpse. A face. No, not a face. Something that only resembled one. Eyes too wide, mouth stretched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Pale, almost colorless skin. And the way it looked at me, like it had been waiting. I yanked the mirror downward, tearing my gaze away. My breath came in ragged gasps, my hands slick with sweat as I gripped the wheel. The road blurred past me, trees whipping by in dark, indistinct shapes. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, right against my neck. Slow down. A cold, clammy hand brushed against my shoulder. I screamed. I swerved violently, nearly losing control as the car veered to the side. The tires skidded against the asphalt, the entire vehicle shuddering as I struggled to keep it steady. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The thing in the back seat, whatever it was still there. I could feel it. The air was thick with something unnatural, something wrong. I didn't dare look in the mirror again. I couldn't. But I knew if I did, I would see it sitting there, grinning, watching me. The road stretched ahead, endless and empty, swallowed by the swirling fog. The trees on either side seemed to twist and stretch in the headlights, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The world outside felt unreal, distorted, as if I had slipped into some place I didn't belong. The hand that had touched me, it wasn't warm. It wasn't even cold. It had felt wrong, like something that shouldn't exist in this world. My shoulder still burned from where it had made contact. A deep, unsettling numbness creeping through my skin. I pressed the gas pedal harder. The engine roared in protest, but I didn't care. I had to get out of here. I had to keep moving. Then the radio came back to life. At first, it was just static, the same eerie white noise that had plagued it before. But then, buried beneath the hissing, I heard something else. Laughter. Soft at first, almost playful. But it grew louder, rising in pitch, turning shrill, distorted. A chorus of voices, whispering, giggling, echoing through the car. And then, "Where do you think you're going?" The voice wasn't coming from the radio. It was behind me. I couldn't help it. My hands trembled as I stole a glance in the rearview mirror. Empty, the backseat was empty. A hollow, breathless relief washed over me, but it didn't last. The air still felt heavy, thick with something unseen. My skin crawled with the sensation of being watched, of something lingering just out of sight. And then, in the mirror, I saw something else. Not in the back seat. Outside. A figure stood in the middle of the road ahead. I barely had time to react. My foot slammed against the brakes, the car screeching as it struggled to stop. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, perfectly still, bathed in the dim glow of my headlights. A woman. No, something that only looked like a woman. Her dress was old-fashioned, flowing unnaturally in a wind that wasn't there. Her hair hung over her face, obscuring her features. But I could feel her eyes on me, burning through the strands, locking onto me with something cold and hollow. She tilted her head, her neck twisting at an unnatural angle. I couldn't breathe. She took a step forward, then another. Her feet never touched the ground. I slammed the car into reverse, my hands shaking. The tires screamed as I sped backward, my heart hammering. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I didn't dare. And then she was gone, vanished, as if she had never been there. The road was empty once more, stretching ahead in silent darkness, but I knew I wasn't alone. The laughter returned. And this time, it was inside the car. The laughter surrounded me. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was inside the car, curling around me like invisible fingers, pressing into my ears, my skull, my mind. High-pitched giggles, low guttural chuckles, overlapping voices, too many at once, as if something was all around me, just out of sight. I gritted my teeth, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers ached. The road ahead twisted in the darkness. The trees on either side warping into grotesque shapes under the flickering glow of my headlights. My breath came fast and shallow. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then something moved in the rearview mirror, not a shadow, not a trick of the fog. A face, pale, stretched, grinning. It was right behind me. Before I could react, icy fingers clamped around my throat. I gasped, choking, my body lurching forward as if something was pulling me back, dragging me into the darkness behind the seat. My foot slipped on the gas, the car swerving wildly. My vision blurred, spots of black creeping into the edges of my sight. Then a whisper. "Stay with us." Number I forced my hand off the wheel and clawed at my neck, at the invisible force tightening around my throat. My skin burned, freezing cold and scalding hot at the same time. My heart pounded so violently it felt like it would shatter my ribs. With all the strength I had left, I yanked the mirror down, breaking eye contact. The grip on my throat vanished. I gasped for air, coughing as the freezing sensation faded. My hands trembled, slick with sweat, as I slammed my foot against the gas pedal. The engine roared, and the car lurched forward. But the road had changed. The fog thickened, swallowing the trees, the sky, everything. The asphalt cracked beneath my tires, veins of darkness splitting through the ground like something alive. The world outside the car was no longer real. Then I saw her. The woman? She was standing in the middle of the road again, motionless, but this time she was closer, much closer. Her head tilted, her long hair sliding away to reveal her face. a gaping mouth stretched too wide, eyes black, endless, hollow, and then she screamed. A deafening, unnatural wail exploded through the air, shattering the windows, shaking the car itself. I clamped my hands over my ears, pain shooting through my skull. The headlights flickered, the dashboard lights short-circuiting in bursts of static. The laughter in the car turned into screeches, overlapping, distorting, surrounding me. I couldn't move. The woman lifted off the ground, floating toward me, her mouth still stretched open in that endless, unnatural scream. The entire world flickered like a broken film reel, flashes of the road twisting into something ancient, something wrong. And then she lunged. Darkness exploded around me, and the car plummeted.